You are listening to the IAMKayPee podcast.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the IAMKayPee podcast, and today's guest is none other than Elliot Reeves.
Pleasure to be here.
Thank you for coming on, man.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I'm glad we get it together in the end.
Definitely, yeah.
A bit of back and forward, but so you're from Inspired Edinburgh. That's your show.
That's pretty much the thrust of it. Yeah. So, a lot like yourself, I sit down and go deep in conversation with, I don't know if I consider myself a fascinating person per se, but that's sort of the intention behind it, and just spreading good vibes.
Yeah,
getting interesting conversations out there.
Because would you consider it a podcast?
No.
Okay, because it's mostly just you sitting like high quality video. It's really good.
Yeah. I had messaged a few people recently to do with a sort of promotional campaign almost that I was running. I won't go into too much detail about it, but anyway, it probably sounds a bit pretentious to people in the podcasting world, but basically, sorry, dude, I'm just gonna adjust the mic.
Yeah, we got technical difficulties.
Technical difficulties up front.
I hope this is that one.
Is that right?
If you just loosen this up now.
Loosen that bit.
The one under me.
The one under
it.
it.
And then just square it up. Perfect.
Do you edit this out, or are you keeping it in?
No, it's fine.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Keep it there? I like
this
it.
is what happens, man. this is
the
real life.
reality of it. I like it.
This is what happens in life.
This is life's not perfect. So
just to sorry, interject, but
sure. Just
kind of trailing on from that, do you find it frustrating when you hear overproduced podcasts when they edit out everything?
I know somebody that runs a high-end podcast. It's called the Human Experience Podcast.
Okay.
The guy's called Xavier Katana, and he's had some truly remarkable global thought leaders on. He edits out pauses, sneezes, coughs, and to the untrained ear, it just feels very odd that it's so ultra sanitized.
Yeah,
that's not for me.
Yeah.
But it works for him. Some people like it.
Yeah.
Some people don't like the imperfections. Which, fair enough.
I'm just supremely lazy. I can't be bothered editing.
Well, there's that as well. It's pretty painstaking. So
back to Inspired Edinburgh.
Yeah. So, I mean, the term podcast, for me, the barriers to entry for starting a podcast these days are literally you can just hit the audio button on your smartphone and record into that, and that constitutes a podcast. If you upload it to SoundCloud and you have the RSS feed feeding into Apple Podcasts or iTunes or whatever, whereas because what I do is it's multi-cameras, it's high-end equipment. Look, I'm not trying to sound, I don't intend to sound pretentious by any stretch, but it's a £10,000 setup.
Wow.
With professional lights and all that stuff. And it didn't start out like that. I started with a smartphone. I've just made it better and better through time, but it's got to the stage where the production is almost so high that it's it feels as though it's become something else. It's basically an online television show.
That's what it feels like, because from the episodes that I've watched, the clips as well that Inspired have shared, it has that feeling that it is it almost has I don't know, if Vice were to do interviews, it was in that way. It just feels like that kind of vibe.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah,
but I mean, but that as well sort of poses its own challenges. So when you've got people that are oh, can I come on as a guest? It's the amount of work and effort that goes into the actual post-production, the distribution, it's a 20 to 30 hour job. So that's why I decided to set up a sort of side show, which is much more of a kind of, I guess, personal branded thing. So it's more I can be a bit more conversational. It's less about the guest. Inspired Edinburgh interviews are very much about, the person in the guest chair. And I like to think of it, I kind of have a loose rule, a 90-10 or 80-20 split between them talking and me talking. So I'm very much just teasing the good stuff out of them. It's them that's the focus.
Right.
But then my personality and who I am gets usurped a lot of the time by that.
Okay.
So I wanted to create something that was more just so I could just, let it all hang out, man. A bit more chilled out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's kind of the format my podcast takes. It's not the me show, even though it's named after me.
You would think otherwise, mate.
But it is about like a conversation, and it generally has to be either 60-40 in their favor when it's a conversation, or it's 50-50, and it feels a lot better that way.
Yeah, I
for
think
this
so.
kind of
100%, 100%. It's been fascinating. Like, to be honest, I was trying to think when I was coming here, when I first came across your stuff. It was really recent. It would have only been in the last probably 2 or 3 months, I'd have thought. And I was looking through your guests, and it's like, Mark John Brown, who we both know, Paul Craig, I'm trying to think of something else. You've had other UFC fighters, Chris Bungard. And then I was like, Daniele Bonelli. How did he get on? I was like, what? So, man, but dude, I have to applaud you. 88 episodes.
I know, man.
Unbelievable scenes.
I'm getting up there.
You are, man. I'll be expecting to see Conor McGregor on the 100th, right?
I don't think that will happen.
Well, you never know.
Punch his way through the door.
Might just be floating through Edinburgh. You never know.
Well, he's on a rampage in Liverpool. He might come up this far. Anyway, the less said about that, the better. Like 88 episodes. I was reading an article, and it was to do with podcasting, because I follow some podcasting pages on Facebook, just as a general sort of like out of interest, and to sort of follow what's happening within the podcasting world itself. Mm-hmm. And there was an article, and it was about how most episodes or most podcasts just go under after something like 10 episodes.
Really?
And it was a combination of just losing interest in it, not the people listening, but just people like not really seeing that they're getting feedback, although the listenership is there. Mm-hmm. And then they're just like, well, I can't be bothered with this. Yeah,
it's a really interesting one. So for me, I firmly believe that there is virtually no correlation between the quality of your content and the number of views that you get.
Yeah.
Because if that was true, that the viewership was dependent upon the quality of your content, and the fucking Kardashians wouldn't be ruling the world.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. I mean, you do have obviously really good quality podcasts that are doing really well, like your Rogans and, Aubrey Marcus, Tim Ferriss, like all these guys. But yeah, I tend to think that, so for me, when I'm producing content, I see it as, I guess, a kind of art, or it's like a creative outlet for me. And it's basically like, the way I look at it, it's a legacy piece. It's like, when I die, this is what I'm leaving behind. This is like my body of work, in the same way that like a sculptor would create stuff.
That makes sense, man.
Yeah, I think so.
And I think it's something that's missing in Scotland, and predominantly Edinburgh, because Glasgow seems to have more of that side of it. They have the BBC Social, which is more based in Glasgow. Like, all the content seems to come from there, and it's good to see people in Edinburgh and other parts of Scotland produce high quality stuff like that. And Scotland itself as a whole, because you never really get that.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. I mean, I personally think that like Glasgow is the capital of Scotland. Unfortunately, I don't agree with it whatsoever.
Stab capital. Not even just of Scotland, of like Europe.
No comment.
That's because you don't want to get stabbed. That's
there is that. But yeah, like Glasgow seems to get all the like recognition. All of the broadcasting companies want to go there, and hello?
Yeah, no. I think
we're the capital city. Can we get something, perhaps?
Why do you think that is? Do you think there's like a resentment from the rest of Scotland? I mean, I'm not from Edinburgh. I'm from like in between Dundee and Perth originally. But do you think there's something to do with the rest of Scotland being resentful of Edinburgh?
No, I don't think it's a resentment. I think that, because I've had a few conversations with people about Edinburgh specifically, and its attitude towards new media, if you want to call it that, it's still a very traditional city. There's a lot of old money in Edinburgh. There's a lot of, it's quite a reserved place. Whereas you look at somewhere like Dundee, which was potentially going to be up for an award for like one of the most vibrant and creative cities in Europe. Glasgow are doing great things. I think that's excellent.
Yeah.
Aberdeen as well. Like, there's loads of cities in Scotland. But I think that oftentimes, because we're the capital, we get overlooked.
Yeah.
Which, the Parliament's here.
Yeah.
Why are there not broadcasting companies?
Yeah.
Why is there not more activity? Why is there not more funding for creatives? Why is there not? Maybe there is, and it goes under the radar, my radar. I'm just not aware of it. But this is a common gripe amongst creative people that I associate with.
Yeah.
So yeah, the honest answer is I'm not 100% sure. But
it's definitely something that is there, though. I think so. I've noticed it, and I've only been in Edinburgh for like 2 years now.
Really,
and I'm not like got my finger on the pulse on the Edinburgh scene in any way, but that is something that I've came to a conclusion is that Edinburgh just doesn't seem to be in the running or in the conversation when people are talking about new media.
I totally agree. Yeah. So
what was the inspiration to do Inspired Edinburgh?
Yeah. So this is kind of a long story. It all probably started with another podcast called London Real, a guy called Brian Rose, who it's very similar styled to Inspired Edinburgh. He sits down, one-to-one conversations. They go really deep in conversation. And that was, I suppose, the earliest seed being planted. So I was a big fan of London Real. I'm still a fan. Brian's changed a lot since then, but the conversations were great. Really liked it. He then set up the London Real Academy, which was like a be your best self tribe networking type thing, which I joined, and their community manager suggested that I meet up with someone who's based in Edinburgh as well, a guy called Craig Alley, who is a health and well-being specialist, mindfulness, meditation. He does a bunch of stuff. So before I'd scheduled to meet Craig for a coffee catch-up, and just before that, I went to a weekend, one of these like inspirational weekend seminars led by a guy who...
Tony Robbins.
No, actually he was trained by Tony Robbins. And he was at the moment, he was my second last guest, Peter Sage.
Right, okay.
And Peter...
Is that the guy with the beard?
No, that's Jimmy Narain, who is sort of semi-connected to... it's a long story.
Everyone's connected to Tony Robbins.
Basically.
It shouldn't be 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon. It should be 1 degree of Tony Robbins.
Tony Robbins. I always heard it was 6 degrees of Hitler. Maybe not quite as good.
Probably.
So, Peter Sage... Peter went viral through his interview on London Real, which is how I found Peter. I went to Peter's 3-day seminar down in London Heathrow, and it was an incredibly transformative, just sort of breakthrough event for me spiritually, and all sorts. It was just amazing. One of the most inspirational things I've ever done. And so...
Spiritually, as in you took it from that, or is that what they were sort of aiming at?
Yeah, good question. He fuses, so he considers himself an enlightened entrepreneur. So he fuses business acumen with spirituality. Right. That's his sweet spot. Mm. And his message attracts people that are in the sort of goal setting, I'm like personal development mode. Listen to your Tony Robbins or Dan Pena, Gary Vaynerchuk. They're trying to improve themselves. They're trying to do businessy, perhaps entrepreneurial stuff, and all that good stuff. And he takes them from there to living in, I guess, flow, a sort of flow state, allowing life to flow through you, using these spiritual teachings, I suppose, as a means to do so. So I came back from that event, and I was working in asset management at the time, and I was looking for a creative outlet, something to do out with that, if it was like a business thing or whatever it was. And so I met with Craig for this coffee. We had a chat, and I just randomly threw out that it would be cool to start Edinburgh Real, a sort of piggyback of London Real, which other people had done in the past. Right, okay. And he was
kind of like TED Talks, like they have TEDx in a lot of places.
Which
is like sort of affiliated.
Exactly. Yes, precisely. And so he was like, "Let's do it." So
that's awesome.
It was cool. Like he had some experience doing podcasts himself. This was all a completely foreign world to me, and this would have been the end of 2015. So it was like, right, I'll need to build a website. I'll need to get a bit of equipment and stuff. And we recorded the first ever episode on the 22nd of February 2016. It was in my dad's office. He's got a serviced office in George Street. And we sat down and we chatted to a guy who I went to school with, who became like a really prominent business leader, but he had failed his way through school miserably.
Right.
And it just fascinated me as to like, how is it that somebody can be so bad under the education model and then go into actual life and be so successful? It's like, wow. So that was when the first ever episode happened. We did about 13 or 14 of them. And then I was like, I love doing this. This is my passion. And I decided to leave my job to then do it full time. Craig and I decided to separate at that stage because I was going to do it myself, basically. And yeah, I rebranded it to Inspired Edinburgh, which basically, to cut a long story short, fused the elements of Edinburgh Real, because the tagline was inspiring others. So it was like, how can you kind of make the good bits of that come together? Inspired Edinburgh makes sense. And then I've published 75 episodes. I've got a few more in the can and then a few more lined up. So.
That's awesome. It's definitely a great name, because it's something when I saw it, it just seems like it's sort of professional, you know.
Yeah.
It seems like it's a good brand, you know.
Yeah, I mean, it was, as I say, well, you can argue that maybe you manifested it on some level yourself, but it all came a little bit together by accident. But it just feels sort of like what I should be doing.
Yeah.
Like I love doing it. And yeah.
And
it's good,
how many
man.
episodes in are you now, you said?
So I've published 75 episodes.
Right.
76 will be going out soon with, do you know Josh Littlejohn, MBE of Social Bite?
No Social Bite.
Yeah. So he's the co-founder of that. And then I've got a couple more, Daniel Ewan Henderson and Gavin Oates.
That's cool, man. When you're doing it, do you actually take stuff from it? Because when you're in the moment and you're trying to ask questions and you're focused on not, stuttering or all these types of things, do you actually take it from it in the moment, like bites or nuggets, or are you just nodding because, that's what you have to do,
Yeah. I think on an unconscious level, everything that you're hearing is going in regardless. Consciously, and you'll know this yourself, having done 88 episodes.
Thank you.
There is a fine line between what am I going to ask next when the conversation stops and being in the moment. Yeah, that's the sort of balancing act.
Oh, yeah.
So with Inspired Edinburgh, I have an iPad that has a sort of structure. That very, very loosely, I go past, present, future, and then deeper philosophical questions around things like, what's your purpose? What do you want your legacy to be? How do you define success? How would you change the world? Etc. I really like those types of questions.
Yeah.
And you really get an insight into what the person's about. So that's, to answer your question, yeah, probably in the moment, there's certain things, probably one or two things that might be super profound and that I really take in, and then because I edit it all again in post-production, sometimes I'll think, oh, right, okay, that was interesting.
Yeah.
But I mean, if you ask me now to tell you one thing from episode 5, I'd maybe remember one thing, but I'd be struggling.
Yeah, I've been the same when people are like, oh, I was really interested by what this person had to say, and I'm like, which episode?
Yeah.
Who? What podcast?
Exactly. But the thing is, your style, how you do the interview, everything evolves over time. I mean, I'm a different person now than I was then.
Yeah.
So by definition, the interviews are going to be different.
Yeah.
Because everything about me is entirely different.
Is it there's an inner layer of spirituality to it still, what you're doing? Like,
yeah, big time.
Is that part of, maybe not outwardly, but is it something that you are trying to entail in it?
Yeah, borderline outwardly, I would say. When I started it originally, the tagline for Inspired Edinburgh was reconnect with your purpose.
Right. Which
is, I guess, where I was at that time in my life. So I felt as though I don't really know whether this is entirely correct when I critique it now in the moment, but I felt as though I had sort of found my own purpose, or found at least a sense of purpose in doing what I was doing. And you see people in life who are just plainly miserable, who are going through the motions, or they're in circumstances that they just hate. And so it was kind of like almost a wake up call to be like, you know, go and like do the thing that you love to do every day. And I know firsthand how hard that is. Nobody's saying that it's easy. Life's not easy. But that was the message. Whereas it was actually just one person said to me, it was somebody that I respected. They said, I don't particularly like that. And I was like, really? I was like, oh, okay. And then I was like, so what is it that kind of makes Inspired Edinburgh? And then it was just a sort of light bulb moment. I was like, it's like the home of powerful conversations. Yeah. And that's the thing that's stuck ever since. And that's what I pride myself on. Like, my conversations aren't going to be for everyone. Like, that's fine. There is a small percentage of people that will really resonate and connect with the types of things that I talk about, like philosophy, psychology, spirituality, etc., etc.
You always find that with those that genre of podcast and what you're doing as well. Like, anyone who's sort of unhappy in their life and looking for some sort of answer, they're always attracted to that type of thing, and they really grab it with like both hands and take everything in. Yeah, you know, like your listenership, it must be the same, you know.
Yeah, well, I mean, I can. This isn't really answering your question, but I can only look at it from myself. I believe that a podcast was a catalyst for me changing a significant part of my life. So it would follow that by listening to other podcasts, the same might apply to other people. Yeah. And it only takes one thing, one like click light bulb, and then you can potentially see things in your life very differently, having a complete paradigm shift and being like, oh shit, I was like, you know, eating meat yesterday, I'm a vegan today. Like, I'm not.
But that's how powerful the medium is of podcasting.
Yeah.
It's crazy that it can have that effect.
Yeah, it is.
Just across the world, you know, people can tune in to one podcast from wherever, and they're following along whatever philosophy is being produced in that podcast, and it's an amazing thing to see as well.
Yeah. What's your philosophy?
What in life?
Well, so podcast specific, but if you want to,
I think I had a general sort of view when I first started. I mean, we were getting in the conversation before we started, and personally, it started just me having fantastic conversations with people when I was out and, you know, on having a drink and whatever. But I found that I had a knack for just asking not for the purpose of asking good questions, but I found that I was asking questions that were good for me and people as well thought so. So I was like, well, I'm just going to have to record this down. But for a long time I would listen to Joe Rogan. Like, I've been listening to Joe since, you know, I think the 400s maybe, you know, way back in the day.
How long was that? Like 20?
I'm not sure.
14 or something? 2015 maybe?
I moved to Canada in 2012.
Right, okay.
2013. So I was listening for like a year at that point. So maybe 2012.
Yeah, that is early doors.
So I don't know, it just totally helped me because I was at a transitionary point in my life mentally, and that helped shuffle that along, you know, just coupled with that and listening and being in a different place. And sort of, I was isolated in my mind, you know, I could isolate myself in my mind with the podcast in this massive city, you know, surrounded by people, and I could sort of learn inwardly, if you know what I'm saying. Like,
I like that.
You just listen, and no one sees you doing anything, but you're learning, you know, and you're changing your thoughts as well, and that really helped me at that time. And I've listened ever since.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I was just thinking back actually to the time Joe Rogan was my gateway into podcasts. He was the first one, typically, you know, bloke in your like, you know, 20s to 30s.
You can't help
pretty
it.
Standards. But I was in Sweden at a UFC event.
Right.
It was Alex Gustafsson and Thiago Silva.
Good fight.
It was a good fight. It was a great fight. And to be in the Globen, like to watch that live was just absolutely bananas.
Was that when Gus lost?
No, he won that fight.
Right, okay. He did lose in Sweden, I think.
Yeah, he did.
can't remember. Anyway,
Might have been Rumble.
Yeah, maybe that might have been that one. Yeah, but that was a good fight though.
It was a great fight, and it was. So we arrived in. It wasn't. I don't know if I'm going to do people of Sweden a huge service here. It was an airport out with the city centre, let's say.
Great Scottish word, by the way. Out with.
Out with?
Yeah.
Is that right?
You never hear it out with Scotland. So. And I get told
Seriously?
that. Yeah, my girlfriend's Canadian, so she's like,
oh, okay.
I've never heard this word.
Yeah. Canadians have got quite strong Scottish roots as well.
I think her dad might have said it at one point because his dad rather is from Paisley. So yeah, she was like, I think I've heard that, but I don't think so. But yeah,
Didn't know that, man. Didn't know that. Out with.
And it is Scottish because I looked it up.
Yeah.
And the internet is a true place for everything.
It is. You like your knowledge.
So,
I've noticed that.
Sorry, you were talking about the...
Yeah, we were on the coach going to Stockholm city centre. We were staying in, it was a nice hotel. I can't remember what it was. It was right on the waterfront. I think it was like a Hilton or something. And he was sitting next to me. I think I was listening to music and he was just pissing himself. And I was like, what are you listening to? And he was like, Joe Rogan podcast. He's got like Joey Diaz on or something. I was like, I have no idea what you're talking about. And then there was another episodes that had Jim Jeffries on, and he was apparently telling some horrendous, sort of dark joke about Madeleine McCann. And he was like, oh, this is like the funniest joke ever, man. You check it out. And I was just like, what? And that would have been, I'd guess 2015 or thereabouts. Can't remember.
Almost 5 years ago now.
Yeah, it might actually be more than that.
Right.
No, it must have been more than that. I'd need to double check. But anyway, it was a wee while ago. And so, yeah, that was I honestly couldn't tell you who the first episodes I listened to was, but I binged a lot of them. Yeah. Yeah.
They're very bingeable as well.
Super bingeable.
And but I didn't think it was going to be as popular as it has become.
It's blown out. I was coming here, actually, I was listening to more of the episodes. So I actually prefer to watch Joe's interviews.
Right, okay.
But if that's not an option, then I'm happy to listen to them. And it's actually him on Aubrey Marcus's podcast.
Right, okay.
And they're talking about how Joe has just exploded. And it's like, if anyone's interested in the background to that, it's really interesting because Joe's really saying that people knew him before that a bit from your sort of Fear Factor and UFC and stuff. But now he's just like, people see him in the street and he's like the podcast guy.
Yeah, he's like, I think his
him.
his podcast's like number one most of the time.
Yeah.
I think.
I
always enjoyed Aubrey Marcus, because he's kind of similar to what you're talking about. Like he has a very sort of spiritual side,
Big
but
time,
he's business orientated. He knows what he's doing and he's able to direct that in a way that people catch on to, in a way, so to speak. But he's very good. I was always disappointed that Joe never ever had Tim Ferriss back on the show, and I always just wondered why, because it'd be good to sort of but he probably charges money to come on shows now.
I wouldn't have thought so. I don't know, man. Yeah, but like, I mean, they're both at that sort of level for sure. Well, I mean, Joe's getting legit big time celebrities. I'm still waiting for the Kanye West episode, but
I don't think it's going to happen.
It doesn't look like it's going to happen.
Have you ever read any of Tim Ferriss's books?
I dip in and out.
Right.
Yeah, I've got actually all of his books apart from Mentors. Yeah.
Did you do the 4-Hour Chef?
No, actually, good one. 4-Hour Weak Body and Tribe. I can't remember.
Tribe
or something.
Tribe, yeah.
I can't remember.
I didn't do the 4-Hour Chef one.
Okay.
I did read the 4-Hour Work Week just because of how much of an effect it's had on a lot of people, and he was saying all those things like way before people were doing anything like that. The whole, he's kind of spurred on the whole digital nomad scene, just with his book, and he's not even a digital nomad. He's just someone who is an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And he told people and showed people that you don't have to work like a dog all the time. Work hard, but for yourself, and make your own worth as opposed to working for someone else.
Yeah. Well, that is, it's only in the last few years that really became an option with the advent of social media and like MLM,
The internet in a whole,
yeah,
you know.
Amazon FBA and all these things. Just like there's so many opportunities. Set up a Spotify, get some cool t-shirts, you're like a millionaire.
Or SoundCloud, and be a mumble rapper.
Yeah,
I thought SoundCloud was going under. Did you not hear
pretty much
this?
is. Well, it's always kind of on the cusp of
Right.
that. Yeah,
It
managed to save itself. I think they laid off staff.
Right, okay.
Yeah, I think.
Because all the indie podcasters I know use SoundCloud.
Yeah.
Well,
It's funny that you should mention, because I was looking for a sort of, cheapish, affordable solution for my new podcast, because I've only done like sort of there's only 3 episodes are live. I've maybe got half a dozen or so. And it's just like, I don't really want to pay another 15 quid or whatever it is a month for Podbean, because I've got,
that's who I'm with.
Yeah, I've probably got like a couple of £100 a month that just goes out to like social media tools like TubeBuddy and Meet Edgar and like all these crazy
like
things.
The little, the extended sort of tools that you have to use to produce a podcast.
But that's it. Like, so many of them are so good, and I'd be lost without them.
Yeah.
But they all kind of cost money, and it's like, well, if
the good ones at least.
Yeah. Well, what frustrates me is why Podbean couldn't just have like a pay £2 extra and have another podcast page.
Yeah.
It's like you'll have to start a whole new thing and a whole new account,
Yeah.
etc. So I've been trying Anchor.
Okay.
Anchor.fm, I think it is, and I'm going to try that out and see how it goes. Failing that, I looked at SoundCloud, but SoundCloud now I think they have some sort of subscription thing to get a certain amount of bandwidth, to upload certain number of gigs, which wouldn't be sufficient for me.
I thought they would have sort of survived off the back of so many people with their mixtapes on SoundCloud, but if you're not paying for it and you're using the free version, I guess that's what's harming them.
I just don't quite see where SoundCloud sits in the world of Apple Music, Spotify, podcasting sites. They're just a really weird amount. I was a loyal fan in the early days of SoundCloud. I had hundreds of musics, like songs or musics.
One music, please.
I had loads of musics.
All right, Grandad, calm down.
I know, show my age.
How old are you, by the way?
I'm 36.
36.
Yeah. What about you?
Good. I'm 32.
Are you?
Yeah.
That kind of figures.
I know, I'm very old.
I thought you were in the window of probably maybe 28 to 32.
Yeah. It's weird because you don't want to be like, how old are you when you get guests on or whatever? But
not when you're just fucking sitting right in the middle of an interview. You just outed me.
But when you're talking to people and then you're like, the references are not what you think, or they're like not getting things, or they're talking about things that are above you, older than you, and you're just like, how old are these people? And you always have to ask.
Yeah, man, it's true. Like, I can't remember what it was that I think I was watching something the other day, or someone was telling me something. Oh, it was actually, I think it was in my interview with Gavin Oates, that he was in a school and it was like they didn't have phones back in, like, when I was a kid. You didn't have a mobile phone.
Yeah.
And they were like, but what would you do if like you were going to be home late and your mum didn't know? It's like, well, you just have to leave and go home. But what if like you had what if you were in like the most remote place ever and it was like, well, you use a payphone and you reverse the charges, like, this is what it was like.
And you had the phone for the clock as well. Do you remember that?
1, 2, 3.
1, 2, 3.
Yeah,
and it's still
classic.
there. Who uses 1, 2, 3?
I asked Alexa today, what time is it? I was trying to set my watch.
But like, how much does that cost the nation, the speaking clock on the phone?
It was always like, I can't even remember who it was sponsored by. Accurist.
That was
I
it.
could forget.
The time sponsored by Accurist. You're like, I just want to get to the fucking time. Stop all the nonsense.
Accurist must have to pull the plug on that. They'll be hemorrhaging money on that guy. He must cost a fortune.
He's probably dead. They probably just, got all his voice work done and that's it. See you later. Give him maybe a tenner. That's it. Didn't know how popular he would be in the 90s.
Unless it's just an actual guy sitting on the end of the phone reading at the time to you.
I know, he's just waiting for someone to be like, how are you? And he's just like,
I'm so depressed.
It's funny that we're that generation where we see before the internet, and we were old enough to be aware that there was no internet, and now being when it's just so integral to everything, like it's so integrated.
It is, but that's scary as well. because we're living through the biggest social experiment of all time, because we don't really know the long-term ramifications of being attached to a screen.
Yeah.
It's like, I think it's transhumanism. It's really just become an extension of the self.
Yeah.
I am now part Instagram.
That's it.
You know, scary stuff.
A phone is just an extension of your sort of biological and actual real self. You know, if you didn't have that, you'd feel like you were missing some part of you in some way. And
I feel like I'm missing part of me right now, not having it here.
Well, I'm using my bloody phone to record this. How do you think I feel? I mean, I'm panicking that I don't know what time it is, and I'm trying to like. But yeah, like just how much that you didn't feel like you were missing something before it all came around. Like, you know, just going out, hanging around with your friends, coming back when it got dark and the street lamps came on, you know, just hanging out with your friends, cycling around, just getting up to mischief. But if you tried to do that now, you know, there's all these helicopter moms that would strangle you to death.
Totally. But there's the other thing as well, that like you just normalize every single thing in life to the point that you just don't appreciate it whatsoever. So it's like the fact that you can just bring up Wikipedia and find out the date of birth of like an actor, when in the past you'd have probably had to go to your local library and like find a book, and you know, I mean, maybe not for that, but you get my point.
And if you didn't have a phone, you couldn't phone your mum to say you were at the library.
Exactly. Yeah.
But the people are always sort of like they look down on when people Wikipedia stuff. It's like, well, you didn't have to learn that, but learning it is just the same. Like you look it up in a book and you memorize it. That's it. You know, you're kind of just doing that, but it's a more immediate. I'm always a fan of Wikipedia and stuff because it always sorts out arguments right there.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes I question the reliability of some of the stuff on it, but yeah, generally it is my go-to source of just, I need to know something. Where will I find it? Just Wikipedia it. What's
your sort of general go-to websites? I mean, do people still go to websites? Is it just Facebook usually people go to?
So it's primarily social media. So I always check like my YouTube analytics, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I've kind of dabbled in Reddit now and again. I'm a big lurker on the UG. The MMA Underground.
Okay, yeah.
Huge lurker. Well, I had an account and I set it up. I always remember the date because it was the 1st of the 1st, 2011. I don't know why on New Year's Day I decided to go in the...
You're like, I'm going to
the UG and set up
know all about MMA now.
What a weird thing to do. But I always remember that. And then for whatever reason, they blocked my account. Maybe I pissed someone off.
Yeah.
And so now... I just go on it and I look through the sort of front page. I look through the forum. I look through I think it's the Otherground, the OG. And then, so I've got a bit of a sort of, cyclical habit of checking stuff. It's a horrible habit.
I know.
But in terms of just generic websites,
do people go anywhere like that, you know? Because back when the internet was first around, you would always be going from website to website.
Yeah.
But now it just feels like everything's so integrated that you don't really have to go out with it. I mean, maybe you go to different websites when you're looking at articles on Facebook, but that's generally...
Yeah, but even then, like I don't really often go and sort of click through if I'm on...
Yeah.
And this is the challenge. Like when I'm on Facebook, I tend to be on Facebook. I'm not looking for distractions, probably trying to ignore them. It's I think the days of like going to a blog or
blogs.
I don't know.
Remember people had blogs.
They're still there, man. Tim Ferriss's blog, I think, still going strong, and his 5 Bullet Friday.
Yeah,
because you get.
I subscribe to that.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Kind of losing my thread here.
Well, I usually go on Reddit. That's the one.
Do you?
Yeah, because
what a toxic fucking place that is, though, man. You know.
I don't go in too deep. I don't look at the comments. I just generally look at the content.
Okay.
Because when you go in the comments, that's when shit starts to go awry.
Yeah, big time. Twitter is similar in that regard. So I consciously ignore what I would consider to be the mainstream media.
Yeah.
So I don't look at newspapers. I don't watch Sky News. I don't have any news apps on my phone or anything like that. Anything that finds me just does so through osmosis because other people have spoken about it. But Twitter is one of the few sites that has trends. So you immediately see like somebody's died or some bombs gone or like something's happened, something's
Sri
trending.
Lanka, that was a huge thing.
So that's how you would find out about something. How I would find out about something like that. I was glad when Facebook did away with that because I was like, I'm kind of don't really want to know stuff that I don't need to know, which might sound to some people a bit, curious, but I just prefer to focus on the stuff that I need to do and try and eliminate distractions as much as possible because there's so many.
I know, man. Like your day's just taken up by it. I don't have the Twitter. It's a hard one for Scottish people to say. Twitter. Twitter. I don't have the app on my phone. I have an account and I barely use it. I just post the podcast every month.
Is it an IAMKPee?
Yeah, that's all I use it for. I just get freaked out by the sort of like it's a feedback loop essentially. Like the people I follow are all going to have the same sort of general thought process as me. Essentially, some people I follow just because of out of like interest, like Count Dankula, like what stupid thing is he going to say next?
Are you a fan of Dank?
When the whole controversy happened with his dog, his Nazi dog, he's not
Buddha
a Nazi.
the Nazi.
I thought the video was harmless. But he's just a troll. He's like an absolute troll, and he's doing that to get a rise. But he's an arsehole, I guess. But when it called into the conversation about freedom of speech, and when it goes that far, you're having to sort of defend someone who is an idiot, and it's like when it comes to freedom of speech, you have to defend it, and that means you're having to put him under that defense, but if we didn't it's a hard one to explain. If we didn't get up in arms about it, then you wouldn't have to defend him, and you wouldn't have to see like you're on his side.
So
that I am. It was a huge conversation that got blown out of proportion. I think so.
See, here's an interesting thing. I've reached out to Mark a number of times to get him on my show.
Yeah,
because I think he's actually an interesting guy.
I tried to get him on the show as well.
Have you?
And I'm not saying arsehole as in I think he's an arsehole. That's just what people were saying, and that's just when you're having to defend something that always people are all saying that about. You're just gonna, that's where I'm saying it from.
Yeah, no, for sure. He was recently on James English's podcast. I've interviewed James.
Have you?
Yeah, I've had James on my show. So Mark, I've reached out to him a couple of times. I've just heard nothing, so I'll assume that. Yeah,
I got the same as well.
Well, I just sometimes wonder. Inspired Edinburgh probably doesn't quite sound like his vibe, if we're being completely honest. And to be frank, he completely doesn't fit the sort of archetype for my usual guest. Yeah. But I feel as though I could have a really interesting conversation with him and really sort of pick his brains on certain things to see what he would say, because
the freedom of speech thing is a huge issue.
Well, I had another interview scheduled with a guy called, you probably know him as Sargon of Akkad, if you do. Yeah, so Sargon was meant to be coming up to Edinburgh a few weeks ago.
Okay.
There was a kind of political rally going on. He was coming up for it, but they pulled the plug. Well, the guy who had the originator of the event didn't get back to him, so he never came. And this is the long and short of it, which is a shame because he's another guy that I think would be a really, really interesting conversation. But there seems to be this really peculiar thing happening to me whereby if I approach somebody who doesn't fit the mold for my show, it's like the universe is sort of subverting or kind of, making it not happen, which is really peculiar. Yeah. Because for whatever, maybe I'm just adding that layer of kind of meaning onto it, and actually they just, maybe a plan just fell through. Maybe they just couldn't make it, or maybe they're just ignoring me. I'm not sure.
Maybe because you feel that way, you're projecting that.
So what I would say is that I am like hyper cognizant and aware of the potential affiliation and what it might do to your brand for having somebody who
Yeah.
is perceived by others as being an alt-right Nazi figure.
Especially in this sort of political climate as well.
Like, I figured that at some stage we would probably have to tackle the whole outrage culture, which is, I mean, I'll hold back just now on that. But
it's hard to sort of broach that with your sort of show as well, because you have these people on that are super positive. They've essentially dug themselves out of the holes. And it's hard to kind of come across that. You don't want to feel like you want to bring the vibe down.
Yeah,
because it's
really
inspired
difficult.
Edinburgh.
I know, man.
That's in your sort of motto, but it is something that has to be talked about.
Yeah, well, there's definitely there's a sort of
in general, not I'm not saying you.
No, of course. There's a bit of a tightrope that I walk in terms of getting eyes on my content and not compromising my personal values and ethics, if you like. And I look at James English loves the phrase "success leaves clues," right? Loves it. Look at James's podcast.
Yeah.
It's gone absolutely bananas because he had Paul Ferris, Blink McDonald, which I produced that. They did the interview, and they did the interview in my studio.
I thought it looked different.
It was my studio, and I produced it for James. I didn't know who he was bringing. I didn't know who Blink was when he turned up.
Yeah,
and he's had other gangsters. Now, I approached Paul to come on my show, and he was due to come on the show, and then at the moment, I've not heard back from him. So I would like to speak to Paul Ferris.
Yeah.
He would be a fascinating conversation. And I'm still hoping that we can make it happen.
You're just putting it out there. And so that
I'm just, dude, I get so used to having a camera on me when I'm having a conversation that it just doesn't even really matter. It's just, as far as I'm concerned, it's you and I here having a conversation. And it just so happens that it's being recorded.
Yeah.
But when I started out originally, I was like, oh my God, I need to be a certain person.
Yeah.
I need to act in a certain way because, like, what are people going to think of me? People are going to think of me whatever they're going to think. Like, everyone's going to judge at some level who we are, and that's fine. Like, what people think about me is none of my business. So they will make their own minds up. I know I'm confident as to who I am, what my values are, and how I am as a person.
Yeah. I think as content creators, it is hard to give that up, that idea of hanging on to trying to perform to everyone and not anger anyone or make anyone sort of disillusioned by your show. You're trying to, like, you're tailoring yourself, and then eventually you just say, fuck it, this is my show. I don't want people listening to me that don't want to listen to me. That's just the way it is. I mean, it's not sounding like, if you don't want to listen to me, I don't want you here. It's just...
No, that's probably pretty close to the truth, to be honest.
I don't mean it in a childish way. I just mean it in a sort of like, you don't want to have to feel like you're putting on a show that isn't you. Yeah. On your show.
Totally.
And I think people start off that way, and it can drain you until you actually break that and just perform, just be yourself.
Yeah. Well, there's a sort of a few things that, because like when I'm in inspired Edinburgh mode, I don't want to, this is something that I've learned through time. I don't want to like dress in a way that's going to show up my guests. I don't want to be more overdressed than them, for example. I don't want to use language that will potentially make me the focus as opposed to them. So like if I'm swearing every other word, then it kind of makes me the center of, energetically, it makes me more of a focal point than them. So I'm very much in professional interviewer mode, and I am simply a conduit for them to be their best selves and bring out the best of them. Whereas at the moment, or on the Elliot Reeves show, I feel as though I can be more like my authentic self and just
Is this your other podcast?
Yeah. Sorry,
is it a podcast or just like a show like with the camera?
It's got cameras and audio.
Okay.
So
nice.
I've got
not just video, but you have audio.
Yeah, exactly. Subtitles, old school, Charlie Chaplin music, black and white. Yeah. So it's like a video podcast as well, but it's less high end. I mean, look, it's still fine, but
I guess like because of your show Inspired Edinburgh, that it's so focused and so thought out that you need that release with a show like your Elliot Reeves show.
yeah, a little bit. Yeah. And I had a conversation with a good friend earlier today about the fact that, you know, and I've always said this, my personality doesn't really come out whatsoever in that. And perhaps I need to be a little bit more outward and, you know, the sort of face of the brand a little bit.
Is it frustrating when you feel that way about not, your personality is not coming across in the interviews?
No.
Okay.
No, because that's how I want it to be. I mean, I could re-engineer it tomorrow and just be like, well, actually, I'm going to talk most of the time. You can sit there, listen, and occasionally chime in, but it just wouldn't make for a terribly good interview. You know, I tend to think of myself as like a traditionalist, in the sense that you look at. I mean, I definitely don't like Jeremy Paxman's style, but he's too interrogative and too pointed. And most of these investigative journalists, they don't get the best out of their guests because they're too combative in their approach. You basically want to be like the person's best friend. Yeah. And like, I'm kind of here to hold your hand and walk you through this process as you tell me your life story and open up about things that you've never told anyone ever, even although there's 8 cameras pointed at you.
It's almost like a porno.
Well, there is that element, but the cameras go off for that.
Without the sex, obviously. But yeah, that is a weird, strange setup. I mean, these people must be used to talking constantly because they're used to speaking in big seminars. So that's what you're trying to make them comfortable in doing. So you're just, like you say, being the conduit for it and then just asking the right questions so you'll tease stuff out of them. I mean,
the people that are really, really good speakers sometimes have a habit of speaking a little bit too much, and it becomes less like, I'm aware that this Red Bull's having some majestic effects on me, man. I'm probably stealing, trying to talk a bit too much here, but I don't know what my point is. It's people who speak for a living, a lot of it's just they've done it so many times. They're just going through the motions with it. Whereas I've not scripted any of this. You've not scripted any of this. We are just 2 guys having a chat. Yeah. And I like
white guys agreeing with each other. Is my podcast subtitle. 2 white guys agreeing with each other.
Well, what's a controversial stance that you have that other people don't agree with?
If people in Africa are traveling 25 miles to get water, why don't they just live beside the water? Like, why do they have to travel that far every day? Just live by the river. I'm joking.
It's a really interesting point. Yeah, that is an interesting point. I suppose it depends what they live in.
Yeah, no, I'm just being silly. I don't actually believe that. There was a really interesting TED talk I seen from this African woman, and she was essentially saying that the depiction of Africa is completely wrong. Especially by the UK and America, and they're having to depict Africa, the continent, as this sort of poverty-stricken and sort of famine-stricken, without any sort of way out other than aid, and they have no natural resources whatsoever. And she comes from like an affluent place in Africa. I can't remember exactly where. And she was saying that the reason they're doing this is because they have lots of natural resources, diamonds and stuff for batteries. You know, was it the lithium and all this sort of stuff? So they're having to perpetuate this so that they can sort of keep control of it and even make Africans believe that this is true as well. You know, she's constantly battling this with everyone that she comes into contact with. And it's a bunch of white guys, not that it matters, but it's a bunch of white guys in the crowd just like saying nothing.
Seriously.
They're just like looking at her. But it's an awesome TED Talk. I'll check it out. I'll send
do, man. That's interesting. I did an interview with a guy called Selby Carey, who's a young entrepreneur. He's doing crazy good things. And
generally never hear young guys with the name Selby.
yeah, it's quite unusual, right?
It's like Agnes for your pal.
He's already Zimbabwean.
All right, okay, sorry.
So it's all right.
Not that it makes a difference.
He's white Zimbabwean, and I was interviewing him. This would be probably a year ago, and he was talking about what he was doing at the time was helping homeless people in Scotland. It was supplying coffee places with cups where money from that would go towards helping homeless people, basically. And I made a trailer for the episode where he's saying like people expect of Africa that people are homeless and like it's going to be sort of poverty stricken because that's the perception. And then there was this really angry guy saying, I think your portrayal of Africa is sort of despicable, because I made the trailer so that the B-roll, the cutaway footage that I used, coincided with the stuff that he was saying. So I had young black children with flies on their faces and people going to sort of get water, type vibe, because that's what he was saying. Yeah. And the person was like, I could show you another side of Africa to show you that, there's great things going on and affluence and stuff. And I was just like, dude, like I've been to South Africa. I've been to some of the most affluent places in South Africa. I went on a rugby tour in 2001 with my school. Like I know that, I stayed in some of the nicest places and ate in some of the nicest restaurants. I know that, but that's not what he's saying. No. He is native to the place, and he's saying that actually people do view it that way. Like, it's like Band-Aid feed the world. Like
I think sort of relatively South Africa has got like a bigger gap between the poverty and the sort of affluent areas as well. It's kind of sort of like some places in Scotland, and Glasgow's got rich parts, and it's got some really, really rough parts.
We have that here in Edinburgh. Yeah. It's just people prefer to ignore that that's actually happening. Yeah. The interview I did with Gary Fraser, who recently did The Grey Area, he's like a BAFTA award-winning film director. Wow. He was second unit director in Trainspotting 2 with Danny Boyle. Okay. And
no way.
Yeah.
It must have been a fun interview.
Amazing. Yeah. Like Gary's from Muirhouse and is, like authentic. That's him. He's from the streets. He knows exactly how he was streets. He is like, he's a sort of urban guy, like awesome guy, but he was a heroin addict, and he made documentaries about him overcoming his heroin addiction, and like super gritty, raw. That's his style of filmmaking. That's his thing. I'm forgetting why I started down this road. Should have left breadcrumbs, mate. But he's very. He's almost working in opposition to the people that are trying to smooth like polyfilla over the fact that we had one of the biggest AIDS epidemics of all time in the 90s. He lost people that were closest to him as a result of that. But yet subsequent governments have just, it never really happens, not that big of a deal. There's murders and all sorts of stuff that happens that we really never hear about.
No, it's crazy. There's some, since I've been here, I've seen some rough parts of Edinburgh that I didn't know existed. I thought that was something of the past, and then going through them, it's just like, this is on par with places I've seen in Glasgow. It's crazy.
Glasgow's
or Fife as a whole.
Yeah. I don't want to sound as though we're on the sort of hate bandwagon of poverty-stricken areas in Scotland. That's certainly not where the angle that I'm trying to come from at all. It's just that, it's people go around in life oftentimes in bubbles of, I just do this and I live a very comfortable life and it's all great. And it's like, well, actually, maybe try and pay attention to what's really happening here. We do have a homeless crisis. We do have areas where people are living and they can barely feed themselves.
That's the big one just now, is the homeless sort of thing. And it's always sort of annoyed me just how people treat homeless people in the UK. Yeah. I think it's getting slightly better in Scotland just because people are becoming more conscious of it. Yeah, but I think England's pretty bad for it. That's something that they just don't deal with. Because that's not the sign of a country that's doing well. Yeah. If you have a bunch of homeless people. I think, what was it? There was a visit from the Royals to somewhere. I'm not sure if it was in Scotland, but they basically had a circumference around the town where they weren't allowing homeless people to come in while the
I've
royals were visiting.
Yeah, I've heard of that. That's appalling. Yeah, that's terrible.
Are you? I mean, Are you from Edinburgh?
I am. Yeah.
So, what was your stance on the whole indie ref?
Yeah, I've kind of gone into this on an episode of the Elliot Reeves show. So I voted no. I was pro. I don't like the phrase of the union, but I identify as being a British.
Okay.
British. I mean, I am Scottish, obviously.
Yeah.
But I like being British. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm a quarter English. It's
the worst part of you.
It genuinely doesn't bother me one way or the other. And yeah,
a quarter of you has to leave right now.
I know, man. Exactly.
I'm joking. I'm not anti-English. I'm not anti-English.
So I went to private schools, right? I went to Stuart's Melville from nursery up until third year or thereabouts. And let's just say I got into a couple of altercations with the management.
Right.
And it got to the point where it was just like, it makes more sense for me to leave here before anything else happens.
Right.
Because I didn't like the environment. If I'm being totally frank, I think that male dominated schools, it was an all boys school. I think that creates a culture of toxic masculinity.
I hate that word. But yes.
I don't doubt you do, but I mean, it really kind of does. There's a very much like a sort of bullying culture, and it's all like lads, and there's not women to balance it out.
Yeah.
There's no yin to the yang.
And it's very much lads will be lads.
Yeah, totally.
Not that I've experienced it, but that's I think I'm extrapolating from what I've seen over the years.
Yeah, precisely. And so that was just my own personal experience of it. And I left there and went to Fettes College. I was there from fourth year till, it's called Upper Six. So 4, 5, Lower Six, Upper Six. 4 years I was there. 4 of the best years of my life.
Right.
When I started, I absolutely hated it. It was like being in some sort of, prison camp. Because I was there. It was expected to be there at 8 in the morning and it was till 9 at night.
Right, okay.
9 at night, man. My housemaster was very strict on this because he felt that it was unfair that day pupils would get to leave early and just go home and enjoy the luxuries of just doing what you want.
Okay.
When everyone else had to do what they call prep, so homework between the hours of 7 p.m. and 9 p.m. And then you would have house prayers. So there would be, someone would do like a reading and then, there'd be some other stuff, announcements and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it was like 8 in the morning till like 9:15 at night, school on a Saturday till about maybe 1 o'clock or thereabouts, maybe a bit later if you had a rugby match.
School on a Saturday.
Yeah, man. And but this is the thing, Borders had chapel on a Sunday as well. I mean, it's a 24-hour experience if you're a boarder. That's it. You live there.
Essentially as a prison camp.
Well, I mean, yeah, sort of, in terms of your day is largely dictated to by other people and you have to be certain places at certain times. But I made such good friends and built such strong relationships when I was there that I just loved the place. And to be honest, I probably suffered some element of emotional trauma when I left that I never really, processed. Wow. Yeah, because it's like I've pretty much had how do I best describe this? A problem. I'll just say I've had a problem with my weight for basically all my life. When I was a child, growing up, and when I was at Fettes, a teacher once said to me, I played rugby and I had good handling skills and all that, but I was quite slow and overweight.
Yeah.
And he said to me, if you lose, so I was playing, I think, number 8 or prop for the 4th 15. He said, if you lose 2 stone, you can play it fly half, stand off, number 10. And I was like, oh, well, that's sort of motivation to do something about it. But I ended up losing 5 stone,
What were you doing
5 or 6 stone. So, I would have been at least 20 stone when I started the weight loss journey. My lowest was about 14 stone.
Right.
And I propped for the first 15. which is ironic because I never got to play standoff for the Force 15. But having there's other drivers when you're young as well. It's like there's the opposite sex, obviously, if you're heterosexual, and sort of myriad reasons.
I am.
Yeah.
Just to confirm to the listenership.
I'm sure. I don't know if.
I know it's been hanging there on the balance for this whole time, but yes, I can confirm.
I trust you.
Just had my girlfriend on the show a few times. And,
I've seen her on a bunch of them. So I was like inspired and doing all that good stuff then. And then I left, and then I didn't have a clue what I wanted to do. I ended up in university, chopped and changed courses, and then ended up going into financial services pretty much accidentally.
Right.
And yeah, you know, if you're somebody that's got like a weight problem, often you will lose a lot of weight and then you'll regain it because you don't fundamentally change your identity or your relationship around or your habits or the things that you actually do. Like I was starving myself, I was taking diet pills, I was doing all this sort of stuff that I shouldn't be doing. So
how old were you at the time as well?
Yeah, like 17.
Can't be good for your health either.
Totally.
Man. But no one tells you how to do it.
This was like early days. There was a Bulgarian guy who was a few years above me who was really into his German supplements. And he was like
Mexican or German.
Well, I know exactly. And he was like, "Oh, you should." I had no idea what he was saying, but it was not because of his accent.
I was like, whoa,
it's like, no.
Stop the bus. I don't have a racist on my podcast.
What I thought he said was something about an easy haystack.
Right.
I was like, what? He was saying ECA, ephedrine, caffeine, aspirin.
All right. Okay.
Which was it was the granddaddy of weight loss. What do you call it when you like stacks?
Oh, like a
stack. Yeah,
stack. Yeah, essentially, yeah.
It's exact terminology. It's a stack. So where are we going with this? So yeah, I took a ton of different supplements, which were ephedrine based or whatever they were, and lost this ton of weight. But then you revert back to your standard habits, and then so my heaviest would have been number of years ago. I would have got up to about 25 stone.
It's pretty heavy.
Yeah, man. And then just recently I weighed myself and I was like, shit. So when I was working, I was probably about 21 stone. And then I was like 23.10 and I was like, I need to take some action. So I've lost about a stone, and obviously I want to lose. I'd be comfortable about 18 stone.
Because if you're a bigger guy, you can't just
Ray Sefo or Mark Hunt or something like that. Like, like a decent size, well, Mark Hunt maybe not so much, but like a decent size heavyweight, 265, 250 pounds.
Because you're taller as well, you got to take that into account.
That would do me.
It's so important for people to realize how to manage their diet properly.
Yeah.
And to know that you can't just do these yo-yo diets. I see so many people on Facebook, friends of mine as well. I hope, because they're on my Facebook friends. But like, and their girlfriends as well. Just seeing them like saying, "I'm going to do it this week. I'm going to diet, and I'm going to do this, that, and the next thing." And then you see them getting like absolutely hammered at the weekend, and then talking about eating a kebab and whatever. And it's just like there's something that needs to be addressed in their mind. I think it's more to do with their mind than it is their sort of physical ability to stop themselves from eating these things.
100%. Like in my view, as somebody with experience, it's a mental health problem. Yeah. It is. It fundamentally is bad habits, but it's all in the mind. It's all in the head. There's a quote that jumped into my head a minute ago when you were talking, and commitment is a massive component of it.
Yeah.
In actually committing. There's a quote that Peter Sage uses it. One of his mentors, George Zaleki. Commitment is doing the thing you said you would do long after the mood that you said it in has left you. It's that like, I'm going to do this and I'm going to stick to this. The way that I typically, historically would eat is no breakfast, probably no lunch.
Wow.
Massive dinner.
Right, okay.
Yeah. So starve.
Yeah.
Your body goes into like low glucose, like I need food. And then I would eat really, really quickly. which would mean that it takes 20 minutes for you to realize that you're full. But I would eat everything really, I would just load a plate and then eat it really quickly within 5 minutes. And then I would be like super, super full, in 20 minutes time, I've overeaten.
Wow.
Rather than having, say, small meals, like a cooked breakfast, which is what I've been doing more recently.
Okay.
Like 2 bits of bacon, 3 poached eggs, a tomato, a bit of brown toast. Like, it means that by lunchtime, I'm only looking to have, a sort of modest meal. And then for dinner, I'm only looking to have a modest meal.
You're not grazing heavy when you get, your
exactly
mid sort of lunch, and it's because you've not eaten lunch or breakfast.
Yeah.
I mean, I've never been able to get myself to eat breakfast regularly. I don't know why. It's not part of me. But around 11, 12, that's when I start to feel hungry. I can't get it in there. I've tried so much, like waking up. I tried the ketogenic diet for a little bit just to, it didn't interest me. Essentially, it's something that you have to have that want for that lifestyle. And that wasn't really what I wanted. But
that eliminates a lot of stuff as well.
Yeah. And I got up and I was trying to have the breakfast because, I work early. So I was having to get up at 6 and make cooked breakfast and all this and eggs, which on the face of it, you're like, fuck yeah. But then when you're just waking up and you're smelling bacon and egg, you're just like,
yeah, I find it a huge challenge.
Yeah.
Because I wake up and the last thing I want is to eat, actually. I'm like, I don't want food right now. I don't feel hungry. I like a glass of water in the morning, maybe a tea or a coffee.
Yeah.
And then my body feels like it wants food mid to late afternoon. So reworking that's been a big challenge. But man, there's nobody that's overweight that is, there's this perception that people who are overweight are just lazy and they just need to move more and eat less. Like people who are overweight are fucking hyper aware of the problem that they face. Yeah. It's just there's, barriers that prevent them from taking action to rectify it. It's hard. And we live in a culture where fast foods and like calorie laden foods is just absolutely everywhere. This guy, there's a number of pages on Instagram that do like healthy snack versus unhealthy snack, and it'll be like a Big Mac versus an innocent smoothie. Right. And the Big Mac's probably got like less calories. Yeah. Even when you think you're getting the healthy option, you're kind of not. But
one of the things I've always had issue with is counting calories, and it's maybe just because of my build. I've always been able to burn super quickly, but at the same time, people are constantly trying to count calories. But that means they could essentially just eat terribly and not and fulfill their calorie quota. Yeah, and then just eat terrible stuff. Yeah. You could eat a pizza and then not have to, eat all day, I guess. And then that's your calorie content for the day, and that's not how it works. It's the type of food that you're eating. That's the most important thing.
100%.
And if you change your diet, there's a lot of people that say, "Oh, this diet worked for me because when I changed it, I lost all this weight." And it's like, well, if you are eating terribly, anything that you do to change is going to have an effect. Even if you have one bit of bread a day, a bit of toast, even if you do some sort of smoothie diet or anything like that, it's changed from all the stuff you were eating initially, and now you're restricting your calories, obviously. But you're going to see a change, but it doesn't mean you're going to be healthy.
Spot on.
It's just about what you're eating.
Yeah. Yeah. What's your diet look like?
Generally it's like pastas, obviously, but my girlfriend, she's a complete pasta fiend. I think she's fake Italian or something like that. But her family were brought up on pasta, but they're extreme. How would the word be? Like they burn fat like it's going out of fashion.
Ectomorphs.
Yeah. And they run marathons and used to, and all this type of stuff. So they were always carbing up. But so it's generally pastas. Like fish. We had fish last night because I was training. So I had some salmon with roast potatoes and some couscous with some beetroot through it. So yeah, that's like maybe a couple of days that, and maybe something like a little bit worse on the third day, and a couple of days like that. I'm not too worried about it at this moment because I'm not training. I just got back to training, so I'm not like...
Yeah, I saw you post about that. So you got any fights coming up or anything?
No, I've not fought in a few years. I did a bit of traveling after the end of a relationship, and I traveled before that as well. But and then when I came back from traveling, I thought I could do the same stuff that I could do in the gym, and then I screwed my back up so badly squatting like in the first week.
Seriously?
Of coming back from traveling, and then I was just like, I was out for a year. Like that's how bad I hurt my back.
What'd you do?
I was just squatting, and I thought I could do. I wasn't using proper form, and I could feel something click in the back of my sort of down in my lower left back, and driving was just painful. And I worked. I was building teepees, so I was driving up and down the A9 every single day. So it was agony for a year, and I just couldn't train. So I want to have one last fight, and then I'll train towards that, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah. Nice.
So you interested in MMA?
Oh man, it's like legitimate diehard fan. So I was aware of UFC for a long time. I think probably the first ever fight I ever saw was Chuck and Randy back in the day. But the real sort of the main thing that drew me into it was Brock Lesnar. So I was a huge Brock fan round about 2001 to 2003.
You mean you were a WWE fan?
Yeah, like I sort of dabbled in WWE stuff. I was a big WWF fan growing up. I went down to SummerSlam in like 1990. Wow. I was a big Brett fan.
Holy shit.
Dude, I'm an OG of WWF stuff.
I was almost
huge.
There. Yeah? I was almost that much of a fan, but like I loved it. I grew up with it.
Yeah,
so the SmackDown and Raw era was my my era.
Stone Cold and The Rock.
Hell yeah,
man, totally. And I did enjoy it then, and but definitely like Brock Lesnar was the one person that I just really, I don't know what it was about his character, but when he came into wrestling, he was the next big thing, as his T-shirt and that, you know.
Literally and figuratively, the next big thing. He's fucking monstrous.
Yeah, and back then he was billed at I think 320 pounds. I mean, he was jacked. He was like, he was on all the good stuff.
All the German supplements.
All the German supplements.
Stacked for the stacked.
So his first fight against Frank Mir was the one that I watched live, and I expected him to just absolutely boss Frank Mir, and then he got like leg locked.
I mean, this was when it was still sort of not a showcase, but it was going into the territory where they were legitimizing it at that era. So, but it was kind of the Wild West still.
Yeah, totally.
It was coming to the end, but when he fought Frank Trigg, it was like insane. Like this wrestler guy that I've watched for years is going to fight this guy that's an absolute murderer on the ground. You know, how is this going to pan out?
Totally. Yeah, I know, man. And I was like distraught when he lost. It's terrible. I think it was probably a knee bar.
Yeah.
Leg lock's more of a wrestling term, I believe.
So it was a figure four, I think. I think so.
Boston Crab.
It was a crippler crossface, I think, or something.
So, and then I was sort of pals with people that were getting more into the UFC. And then, it just became more of like a thing. And it got to the point, maybe a couple of years ago, where literally any weekends that there was an event on, I would stay up all night and watch it. But that just became so destructive to my week. Because I mean, I go to bed late anyway, and I do have trouble getting to sleep a lot of the time because I'm very much a nocturnal person, and my brain kind of comes to life. Unfortunately, during the night, I'm very creative. I like to do editing and things at night. Yeah. If I'm, say, writing something, I tend to write a lot better at night. My brain just seems to work a little bit better. So I kind of got out of the habit, and now basically it's like numbered events. I'll stay up and I'll watch them.
Yeah, I'm not so keen on the sort of fight nights.
It depends who's fight. I know like Reeves fought recently on one of them. I only watched the highlights of it. So it just depends. I'll be interested probably for the main event. Yeah. It's a shame because there's so many. It's reached like a saturation point because John Jones started on the undercard. Everyone came from somewhere, and it's cool to see somebody's journey when they make that level of progress, but it's too much. It's too much.
It's become its own beast. It's so it doesn't take it's not loaning from anything else. It doesn't take anything. It's not following boxing. Even the way they do their the weight system, the rankings, all this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
It's just its own entity, and I think that's why it's taken on something like boxing. I think boxing's going to go at the wayside a little bit.
Well, Dana White's plans now are to go into boxing around about summer, autumn this year is when he'll start to announce the big plan for the UFC.
Right.
The Zuffa era was sort of the golden era when they had legitimate rankings, proper number one contenders.
Hell yeah.
They were putting on the fights that
was
made sense.
No one was jumping the queue to fight the champion.
Yeah,
it never
precisely.
happened. It was if you earned your shot, you're getting that shot.
Yeah.
When did you ever hear of an interim title fight in the Zuffa days? Never.
I'm pretty sure Frank Mir and Minotauro.
Probably
there's
the
a few
first
instances,
and last.
Maybe. But yeah, you're right. I mean, Rich Franklin recently came out and said if he was fighting today, he would never have been he probably would never have had the title or never been a challenger because he was just one of those keep your head down, get on with it, respectful guys. Yeah. Now it's just if you're a total gobshite and you're getting a title. Realistically, it's all about promotion. It's promotional marketing, and that's why Conor was so effective.
Yeah.
And I personally think Chael was perhaps the original.
He was there beforehand.
He was the one. There probably were people before him, like Muhammad Ali. You could probably trace it back to the earliest roots of, pugilist or combat sports. I get that, but in recent memory, Chael was a master of the spoken word.
Yeah, man. Just to see him work the mic sometimes, just go on these mega rants. And just see people's faces. It was unbelievable. But he took a lot from wrestling. That style of sort of talking people down.
Totally.
But Conor is more sort of like Muhammad Ali in a sense. It's sort of just off the cuff as much as it is sort of somewhat scripted in his mind, I guess. But it's just amazing. I mean, the shit talking's it's gotten beyond a joke, I guess now. It's not for me. And it's nice to see people are becoming more conscious of that. A lot of fighters are starting to now make efforts to not talk so much smack. I know who fought Poirier and Holloway. That was great.
Yeah.
That brought me back to some of the old Zuffa fights in terms of how they were to each other. They left it up to the fight, and that was it.
Yeah.
And it was good to see. That was an amazing fight, by the way.
Amazing.
Did you watch Izzy as well when he fought Kevin?
Do you know what? I watched it, was it 2 nights ago, in preparation of this, because I knew that you'd probably bring it up. And I recorded that event. I didn't think that the main card in the lead up to the top 2 wasn't terribly good.
Wasn't that
the
great?
Undercard wasn't great. So I was like, I'll save myself for a John Jones headliner or something. And so I watched it the next day, but I watched it at 30 times speed to just kind of capture it. And from what I could see, it's funny how when you watch a speeded up fight, even if it's 2 times, 6 times, 12 times, how the result of the fight can look like somebody. I thought Kelvin dominated it at full speed, speeded up.
Okay.
But then I watched it the other night, and the amount of hype that came with it, I was just people thought this was the greatest fight of all time. I don't know if it was a Shogun Hendo type affair, but
I'm definitely
not
there.
awesome.
I thought it was amazing.
Yeah, it was a very it was obviously it was a really good fight.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Maybe I'm being harsh.
I think as someone that's fought and trained, I don't know if that makes the difference between how you. I mean, it's all relative. It's one answer's not right or wrong.
Yeah.
It's just that's how some people perceive it, and other people. I could see how some people might think it was quite not on par with other great fights that were sort of more exciting, or it was a domination. Sometimes I think domination matches were. That sounds more like wrestling. Domination match. Hell in a Cell. When someone overtly sort of just dominates someone, some of those are the best fights ever as well, just to see someone be so skillful. But I thought it was great. It was great.
Yeah.
Just because Kevin has got hands of absolute concrete, and just to see Izzy just stumble. And he took shots Did you see his face afterwards?
Yeah, I did.
He looked
Yeah,
like the
his
Elephant
lip
Man.
was like totally
crazy.
Yeah. But I mean, like, this is just my opinion. It might not be a popular one, but I don't think Kelvin Gastelum should be fighting a middleweight. He's a welterweight.
Yeah.
You know, he could possibly make lightweight.
Yeah.
So I think he's fighting against guys that are like too big. Like, he's fighting against Chris Weidman's a perfect example.
Yeah.
He was just outsized.
I think as he's gotten up further up the ranks, that has become sort of somewhat of an issue.
Yeah.
I just don't think he can make it like physically anymore. He just doesn't feel going down the way in weight is good for him.
Yeah, it probably depletes him.
But yeah, like you're saying, the guys that are at the top in that division are going to be bigger than him.
Totally.
Yeah.
We're in a really interesting time as well because Conor has paved the way for guys to really start moving around in weight. And so you've got like Bobby Knuckles, Robert Whittaker talking about going up to fight John Jones. He was a 170 pounder originally, and now he's talking about going up to 205. And yeah, I think like I like that. I like that. Anderson was one of the early guys to do it when he fought against like Sam Manorvin, Stephen Bonner, but he never fought for the title.
BJ Penn.
Yeah, BJ's. Well,
He fought
BJ fought
heavyweight.
Makita at
He fought
205.
heavyweight. That's fucking insane. Have you seen the
in
fight?
fact, it was Machida. I think Machida was 220 in that fight, and he was like 190 pounds. Just like this bloated, version of BJ. I've met BJ in person.
No way.
Yeah, man. When I went to Sweden, I was a UFC Fight Club member, so I had like pictures taken and autograph signings with BJ, Stefan Struve, and Czech Congo.
Wow.
And I've got a picture of me standing next to BJ, and BJ's head's like 1.5 times the size of my head.
Really?
And I'm like, I'm a big dude. His head's like this. It's like a concrete block.
Maybe he was on some sort of human growth hormone.
I don't, it's totally possible. He never really physically looked like he was.
He's
but
not very tall either, is he?
No, not at all. He was maybe like, he was seated, but he'd probably be like 5'6" or something.
Right, okay.
No, but like huge proper heads for taking shots.
Maybe that's why he's slowed down in his old age. He's just
Maybe.
got his fat head and people keep hitting him in it now. That's how fighting works.
That's been a shame to see. I hate seeing fighters fight past their prime and not know when to hang it up.
It's hard for fighters to know when to hang it up, because you see that light, you think if you get new trainers, you think if you get a new diet or a strength and conditioning coach, you think this is it, this is how I'm going to get back in the realm. And it's just the age, it's just a motherfucker.
It totally is, man. But as well, like the game evolves. Like the guys that are coming up today, they didn't specialize in one discipline.
Yeah.
They started in the art of mixed martial arts. That's what they were studying.
Yeah.
They weren't boxers who had to then, like, you look at like a Miletich, for example, like a really good wrestler who then had to adopt all these other bits and pieces to make himself a really well-rounded fighter. Whereas guys today, they are well-rounded out the gate.
Yeah. I mean, the MMA is the style that they're learning.
Yeah.
But I wonder if I think it'll be maybe sort of peaks and troughs. I think people will start going back to learning the individual arts, like, and become specialized in them somewhat, and then it will go back to being blended again. It's just with the way these things work.
Yeah.
But it's so cool just to
right.
see some of it. Like I know it's a bad one to talk about as he's just been busted for drugs, but TJ Dillashaw's like stand up. He's one of my favorite. When it comes to his stand-up, he's just so fluid as well.
He is, man. I've met Dwayne as well. Dwayne Ludwig. So funny, dudes. It was in Wembley, London.
He sounds like he's on cocaine all the time.
Dude, his brain is really quick. He was with Justin Buckles and Dwayne.
Yeah.
And I was just like, Dwayne, can I get a selfie with you? And he just looked at me straight in the face. He was like, no. And I sort of stopped in my tracks. I was like, what the fuck? And he was just like, yeah, man, I'm only kidding. And I was like, all right, okay, great.
Maybe he was judging whether you would be disappointed or not. And if you just went, okay, then you'd be like, see, I got him away. And then because you were like, okay, he was like, I'm only kidding. Could be it.
Oh, maybe, man. Maybe. He was a good fighter in his day.
Oh man, it's just unbelievable to see that lineage from Baz Rutten to him and then DJ. Well, TJ, should I say?
Yeah.
I mean, what do you think is going to happen with TJ?
Nothing good.
Do you think he'll come back?
Yeah, I think he'll definitely come back. So he's still super active on social media, like not almost as though nothing's happened.
Yeah.
And he's getting just trolled daft. People are writing just the most horrible stuff.
Yeah.
Like you could imagine.
Of course, yeah.
And he's just like, people are going to think what they're going to think. Well, just get on with it. Like for me, man, I don't think ever looking at TJ Dillashaw, he looked like somebody that passed the smell test.
No.
I always suspected he was probably somebody that dabbled in
Something,
stuff. Yeah, just to be like that shredded and like like really sort of muscular frame,
vascular sort of
vascular. It's a good word. That
sinewy and sort of. That's one of my favorite words.
Yeah.
But I think he initially was on something. I think then there was a period when he sort of lost the belt. Around that time, I think that's when Nowitzki was coming in, and the rules had changed on the drug testing, and he kind of didn't look the same physically in this the fights leading up after that. And then I think somehow he managed to get around it, and then you see his body changing again, and it went back to sort of like super jacked, ripped.
Yeah. Well, what I think for me was most interesting was that it was EPO that he tested positive for.
Yeah.
Like I wouldn't have expected that. I'd have expected it would have been more like a designer anabolic,
right,
rather than
I think
EPO.
I think it's one of these things that the testing's caught up with. For a long time, it was something that people couldn't really test for. It was super expensive. It just wasn't worth them to do it, and it was very specific to, you almost had to be injecting it in your body and then them testing you on the spot for it to come up. I think.
See, I always thought C-level Cain Velasquez was an EPO guy as well.
Oh man,
just with his cardio,
it's just
for a heavyweight to just be that. I never watched much of his wrestling back in the day. He was massive. He was a lot bigger than he fought.
Thick,
he was like 300 plus pounds. So maybe he just had freakish cardio, but maybe he didn't. Because when he fought at altitude against it was Fabricio Verdum, he just looked like a different guy.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, he's insane. I think it was a combination of things, and then if you're taking that on top of it, you're just going to look like a superhuman.
Yeah, but I'm also butthurt because JDS is my favorite fighter.
He never ever looked right after those fights. He just looked like some Kane had taken a piece of him.
Took his soul.
Yeah,
he's looking a lot better these days.
Yeah,
when he was fighting against, there was a few fights like against Alistair Overeem. And there was another, the second Stipe fight,
right,
where he just looked like a shell of himself. He was gun shy. He just wasn't letting his hands go. And for me, he's the best offensive fighter in the heavyweight division, bar none. When he is, when he's throwing, he's just an absolute savage. Yeah, and I can't wait to see. It'll be interesting to see if what's his bloody name, Francis Ngannou, whether he can actually catch him with a shot, because if he does, then it's probably going to be lights out, or it's certainly going to be in trouble because his chin, like Junior's chin's not what it was.
No, it's definitely faded a bit.
Yeah,
but at the same time, Junior's so slick with his hands when he does let go. But all Predator has to do is touch you and you're going out.
Yeah, totally. But like, if I was. And I may well put some sort of bet on it, I would take Junior to win by probably decision.
I think you might take him down because Junior's got a good ground game.
Nah.
He's got it in there.
He just doesn't. It's like he never really uses his ground game because I think he's a BJJ black belt. Yeah. As most Brazilians are, but you see a lot of Brazilians
by proxy.
Just by proxy.
They're all BJJ black belts.
It's true. But like there's so many of them that when they're on the ground, like say like a Vitor Belfort, never really look to utilize a lot of their BJJ skills. Yeah. Like in his Rumble fight, when Rumble just like lay in braid style for a good portion of that fight.
There is a
they were stood up.
There is a tendency for MMA fighters to do that when it's someone who had one skill initially, say a wrestler or someone who's a BJJ practitioner, when they finally start to learn how to throw their hands, they just go towards that all the time.
Like I was thinking about examples of that recently, like Josh Koscheck or Johnny Hendricks, who are guys with like elite wrestling, like really, really good wrestlers who had a bit of success with their hands and then just became boxers.
Yeah.
And, and that was their downfall because they were fighting against guys who probably had better stand-up than them, worse wrestling, but they would never use their wrestling.
Have you seen
Never made sense.
Koshik's initial fights? Like, he's running away from guys that were trying to just make it a stand-up battle. That was turning his back.
Tough one around then.
Didn't want
totally.
anything to do with the stand-up.
No.
Like, was scared. And then just turned into, like, he had quite slick stand-up.
Yeah.
And then he just relied on that and eventually kept getting knocked out. That's what happens.
Totally. Yeah.
Are you Game of Thrones fan? By any
I'm
chance?
not, mate.
You're not?
No, I'm definitely not.
You must be like completely annoyed by all this chat that's going on.
Yeah, it is what it is. Like,
Do you watch much? Because
tons.
obviously you must be like
everything.
You must be like quite busy.
Well, I tend to get a very good life-work balance, which is mostly life and less work. But yeah, Game of Thrones, like I tried it for like 1 or 2 episodes and people say you need to let it go a bit further than that. And I just like, it just,
I struggled for a long time.
Yeah, same with The Wire. Like I watched the first season of that, tried to get in season 2, didn't like that. This, like, I've watched most, and I genuinely say like most things. I watch a lot of box set stuff, Netflix seasons. Yeah, most stuff, man. I like, just in the evenings, they say like, personal development people are like, oh, you should read a lot more than you watch telly.
Yeah.
Not sure if I quite get that balance. But I tend to watch things through a lot more of a critical eye. And because I produce content, I can appreciate like the cinematography in something like The Handmaid's Tale, or there was one that, but I mean, series specific. There was one called You with Penn Badgley, who was in Gossip Girl.
Okay.
He was in a show recently where like they used so much like bokeh blurring background and stuff. Super
great cinematography.
Cool. Yeah, so I can appreciate that stuff a lot more now.
Yeah,
but I went through like I think you're gonna ask me at some stage what my favorite film is.
Oh yeah, I'll have to end on some sort of. But yeah, eventually I'll get to that.
How are you doing?
What time is it?
It's like 6:30.
Okay.
25 to 7.
Okay, so we've been doing an hour and a half. Right. So
I wasn't prompting you to ask me
you
that.
You can leave if you want. It's fine. You constantly be just checking your.
I'm totally comfortable here. No, I'm enjoying this.
Yeah, where was I going with that? I was talking about something.
Fuck me. It was like.
Oh yeah, like you know how you said that most people that we're talking about that you should read more than you watch. Me personally, like. I can only take stuff in if I listen to it or watch it.
I'm the same.
I can't. There's just something that I glaze over when I read something. I try so hard. It took me like 8 attempts to read The God Delusion, Richard Dawkins. It just took me forever. Not that it was just, I was illiterate. I just couldn't focus, it was just there. But then when I listened to it in audiobook or I watch documentaries all the time. That's just how I take media in.
I'm the same as you, 100%. Like YouTube is my go-to for that sort of stuff, or audiobooks on iBooks or whatever. Yeah, I mean, I find that I can read pages of a book or chapters of a book, like a chapter, and then sort of enjoy it.
Yeah.
But a lot of the time I'm just reading stuff, especially if it's dense material, and I'm just like, I could read that 6 times and barely get the thrust of what it's saying.
Yeah.
It's weird. I'm a very visual person. But the thing is as well, like I don't know that you're ever taught to read, which maybe sounds like an unusual thing, but when you look at people who speed read, or I don't know if you've ever explored the art of speed reading.
It's like,
but you're actually
the first
not
3 words in and the last 3 words on the line.
Basically, what it is that you're what's the word? You're bypassing the bit in your head that's saying the words aloud, so that you're actually just seeing all the words really quickly as images almost. And so you can just look at the block and just skim down it like super fast. And so your brain knows what it's saying, but you're not saying it in your head.
Right, okay. Do you take it in though?
Well, yeah, like you should be taking it in. I've done it before using an app. So it's just it actually plays the words at like super fast speed. So they're just flashing up like that.
Fucking hell.
But it's amazing as to how much you actually retain from that. Because you can't possibly say the words in your head. It's going way too quickly.
It's like some sort of litmus test.
But it works. But then doing that in real life is hard unless you're tracing the words or you have something to do it with.
Definitely. I just find the audiobooks such a valuable tool for me to listen to. And especially when people that write them read them as well. To me, I always find it better because you understand the intention when they say it. Because if I read it, I won't, even though I'm reading the words and I get what they're saying, you don't get the intent of the writer. Mostly with non-fiction. Mm-hmm. But if it's fiction, generally I like to read it myself because then it's my imagination doing the work. But if it's non-fiction, there's nothing better than the actual person who wrote it reading it, because you completely understand it at that point. Mm-hmm. You know, it's not something you have to go, am I reading this wrong?
Yeah. It's possibly a limitation of mine. I've not read a fiction book in ever. Yeah, like, you know, School to Kill a Mockingbird, something like that. And even then, I think it was probably my mum that read it and did the report. I'm just not a fiction reader.
I'm very
personally.
Much the same. Like, I find real life interesting. So, you know, science books and all this sort of stuff, and history as well, just does so much more for me than I think the Book of Leaves is one of the last ones I sort of read as non-fiction. You know, it's not. And that's just because it was purely interesting as a book. You know, it's a great book. It just doesn't really do much for me.
Yeah, I'm with you.
And I can get all that through films.
Yeah, precisely.
Bringing it on to the old Avengers. Oh, yeah. Are you a Marvel fan? Uh-oh. You're just shooting down all my talking points.
Yeah, I seem to be. Marvel, I mean, Netflix seasons, yes.
You must have been distraught when they all got cancelled.
Yeah, I was a little bit taken aback by that. So I sort of watched most of them. Daredevil, Jessica Jones, Iron Fist I wasn't a big fan of, Luke Cage. But then you kind of watch it, because there's a bit of a delay. So what I've noticed with myself is that I like things that have either concluded or are very much at an advanced stage. Yeah. So you've got 5 seasons. And you can just binge it all. Whereas if you're watching a season and then there is 4 or 5 months until the next season, the continuity is interrupted, and I find it really difficult to get into it. So, I was shocked at that. Yeah. But like Netflix, their business model is such that they hemorrhage money in the creation part and the procurement of their footage, their seasons, and they don't monetize terribly effectively because it's really low level subscriptions. So that business model is always going to struggle, and like those seasons probably cost a decent amount. So
they're just going to have
maybe
to
a foregone conclusion.
Dead weight, I guess.
Yeah,
but do you think they're able to maintain that? Are they going to be able to stick around? From, you know, the stuff they're producing is unbelievable. Some of the content is amazing. And their own stuff that they produce, not just what they're scouting for and bringing for people to watch. Can they maintain that on what people pay per month?
There will come a time, and I think their business strategy is to increase the subscription at a stage when,
because they did that recently, didn't they?
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure, mate. To be honest, they probably did.
And Disney's bringing out their own version.
So it's like BBC.
Yeah. So I don't know how well it's going to do, for how well Netflix is going to do.
For me, Netflix is like the Rolls Royce of streaming services, subscription services.
But they're not going to be able to do anything that's related to Disney, because Disney's pulling all that, I think. So that they're taking all their stuff to put on their own streaming app.
Yeah.
So God knows what's going to happen.
I'm not sure, man. I'm not sure. It'll be interesting to see what happens for sure. Yeah.
But yeah, so I can't wait for Avengers Endgame, man. Do you watch any of the movies?
I watched Avengers Assemble.
Is it not your thing? Yeah. It's funny how you're into the TV series, but you're not.
I know, yeah. And I've never seen Black Panther or I've never really watched any of the individual Marvel films, actually, which is strange.
It's like you're trying to like get to the point. That's what you're doing with them. You're just watching the Avengers. Like, I don't need all this bullshit surrounding it.
I think what it is that I probably watch way more seasons of stuff than I do films.
Right.
I just find that the 90 minutes to really properly explore something in detail just isn't quite enough.
Yeah.
So it's like a bit of a, it's interesting for that time period, but I really like something that goes into more depth.
Yeah. Yeah.
So seasons, box set, man.
I think that sort of might be the way forward is those sort of episodic movies, you know, like every week is just as good as an individual movie, but it's an episode.
Well, they're better.
Yeah. Game of Thrones is like that. I mean, have you watched anything from the recent sort of episodes just by chance?
Mate, no. Honestly not. Like, I just,
you know, they become cinematic on a huge scale. Mm-hmm. It almost is a movie.
Yeah. Well, but like even looking at the caliber of actors that have gone into seasons as well. Yeah. Like Big Little Lies, you had like Nicole Kidman and Reese Witherspoon and whatnot. You've had Bradley Cooper in Limitless. You've had True Detective has drawn some of the, you know, Matthew McConaughey. Who else? I can't remember the guy's name who recently won an actor for supporting. He's got a difficult name to pronounce. You probably know who I mean.
Yeah, probably.
Black dude. He played Cottonmouth and Luke Cage. Anywho.
I don't watch Luke Cage.
What?
No.
Dude. Really?
It's not for me.
Really? How do you know that if you've never watched it?
Because I know that.
It's like me. I mean, I've given Game of Thrones a try in fairness, but
what is the sort of one thing that you say you've never seen and most people are like, give you a bad reaction? Would it be Game of Thrones?
Narcos is one that I've never...
Yeah.
Well, I just feel as though I'd want to do that justice.
Yeah.
And sometimes the thought of subtitles is just a bit like, I'm just not in the mood for that.
Yeah.
I need to be in a certain mood to really appreciate something. Mm-hmm. And, you know, it's the sort of thing that will happen at some stage, but when the time's right.
Yeah.
So it's meant to be,
Your
man.
list on Netflix must be so long. You're like, I'll get this one eventually.
I've watched, and I really enjoy Netflix documentaries.
Yeah.
Really enjoy them.
They're just killing it with all that stuff.
Yeah.
It's just unbelievable.
I recently watched one on the Fire Festival. I don't know if you've seen that.
Oh, man, that was unbelievable.
Amazing. I was immediately going in search of things similar to it. There was nothing. I was like, no.
No, there's not a bunch of like upper class people getting what's coming to them in a Fire Festival type documentary.
Yeah, that was awesome. There was one or two other things actually that I've recently watched. The Gianni Versace.
Right, okay.
That was incredible.
There's one that's always been on my list, and it's like, is it Searching for Sugar Man? Have you heard of that one? It's like this old sort of South American musician, and he was sort of popular in the 90s, I assume. And it's this guy going in search of him because he was a fan of him. I think he's from America or the UK. And it's always intrigued me because I love music as well, obviously. But I never get to it. And have you ever had this when Netflix starts taking movies off that you've had on your list forever, and then you just don't ever get to it? And I'm like, where is it?
I've never been fortunate there, but Sky have done that a few times.
Right.
I was watching, it was Modern Family, and I was through like season 6 halfway through, and then they just took it off. I was like, what are you doing? Why would you do that? Like 7, 8, and 9 were still there, but they just took like one season off.
Right.
Why would you do that?
That's insane.
Terrible.
Doesn't make sense.
Really disappointing.
One thing I wanted to actually get to when we were talking about Inspired Edinburgh.
Sure.
Initially, I just wanted to it came to me, but I forgot to ask it just so we're coming back to what we started off on.
Okay.
Was like, who's been your favorite guest on the show?
That's a difficult question for me to answer because I feel guilty, you know, if I say one particular person. But yeah, well, so when I started out originally, there were 2 people out of pretty much anyone in the world that if I had the opportunity to interview them, that would have been like bucket list goal complete.
Right. Okay.
You know, mission complete, happy days, I'm sorted. Dan Pena, the $50 billion man, and Peter Sage. And I've interviewed both of them.
No way.
Yeah. And and I was reflecting on this earlier. If you had
$50 billion man. Why is that?
Dan isn't worth that. Dan is worth in the hundreds of millions.
Right. Okay.
But he is created vicariously through other people, through his devotees, mentees, etc. They have gone on to create wealth using his teachings.
Okay.
And it's created $50 billion in total worth or wealth. But it's
through
significantly
several companies and
it's just like the people. So one of the people, a guy. So it's way more than that now. His mission now is to become the $1 trillion man. A couple of years ago, I believe it was, a guy called Klaus Kleinfeld, I think his name is. He was the former CEO of Siemens. Was involved in a deal to start up this mega city in the Middle East called Neom, and it was a $500 billion deal, the biggest deal of all time.
Wow!
And he was instrumental in that. That immediately put Dan's figure up by like 500 bill. So that's how he quantifies it.
Right.
But like Dan's awesome. I like Dan. He says what he thinks, speaks his mind. He's brutally honest. I don't agree necessarily with everything that he says, but I respect that he is willing to put himself out there and say that.
He's doing something right.
Yeah. And Peter, as somebody who's been a major influence, a sort of mentor figure in my own life, and somebody that's really challenged and shifted a lot of my belief systems, that the conversation that I had with him just fairly recently, start of the year, was a game changer.
Right. Okay.
Really, seriously, those are two podcasts that, in my opinion, stack up well against any of the best podcasts out there.
That's cool. It's cool that you have that sort of trust in what you're doing, especially with those episodes.
I look at other interviewers through a very critical lens. But my personality, I don't know if you've ever done a Myers-Briggs test.
Yes.
Yeah, so my personality type is an ESTJ, so it's extroverted, sensing, thinking, judging, I think is what it is.
I think NASA's looking for you.
Well, it's the executive, or a motivational director. I've done other tests. So I look at things very judgmentally. I'm very logical. I'm very no, this is the right way. I don't suffer fools gladly. I hate that phrase, but it's true. I'm just this is the right way to do things, which is flawed, but anyway. And so, again, I kind of lost the plot on where I went with
we're
this
talking about your favorite episodes with your
so I look at thank you. I look at other interviewers and I'm like, what are they doing well? What are they doing badly? And what I see, the trend is that a lot of interviewers, particularly when it's a self-branded show, it's very much about them elevating themselves to be like, I'm on the same level as Dan Pena. Look at me, and I'm going to get my opinion across, and it's going to be it's my show. And I'm like, no, I put myself below the guest, which is maybe people disagree with that. Maybe they think you should be equals or whatever. And I don't mean that in a sort of parent-child sense, but basically I'm like, they're the big deal. I'm just me, and I'm the facilitator. Yeah. Nothing more, nothing less. Mm-hmm. So, and I think a lot of interviewers get that wrong.
Yeah, you do see that quite a bit. I mean, I've seen it.
Joe Rogan gets that wrong.
Yeah, I think so. Sometimes I've been so surprised at how he's went on to almost calls someone. He says it's calling someone on their bullshit, but he's pretty much berating them, and they're pretty much expert in their field. Not that means anything, when it comes to talking in a conversation. But at the same time, I felt uncomfortable listening to it. It's okay.
I think it's because he just does it so much.
Yeah,
and he just gets so used to doing it, and if certain people's attitudes don't align with his own, he maybe gets a bit pointed. Plus, I'm sure he's got a lot of shit going on in his life.
He's a multi-millionaire. He can do whatever the fuck he wants.
He's got fuck you money.
He does have,
and that's the beauty. I am, whilst I can let loose a little bit and talk like this. Mm-hmm. Still at the back of my head, there's a little bit that's right, hold back on some of the things perhaps that wouldn't necessarily be super popular with people. Not that there's much, to be honest. I'm pretty open and honest.
What have you got in there that most people won't like?
It's a great question.
You asked me.
I did.
And I told you about my water thing.
Yeah. You made it. Oh, it doesn't really count. I don't know, man. Probably attitudes around social justice warrior,
Okay.
super left wing. So let's talk gender.
Okay.
You know, so I don't believe that there's like
spectrum.
multiple
Okay.
genders.
Yeah, a spectrum of genders. Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
There's men and there's women.
Well,
That's
there's
it.
like scientific in-betweens, but those are very rare.
Those are, as
Yeah.
Ben Shapiro
Yeah.
would say, they are
Yeah.
anomalies. You know, they're just, you're going to get that in the sort of volume of things that we're dealing with, in the same way that in nature there are, for the want of a less out there term, aberrations.
Yeah.
There's things that deviate from the norm.
Yeah.
But yeah, as far as I'm concerned, there are men and there are women.
Yeah.
And then there are people who don't wish to be categorized as such, and that's fine.
Yeah. I'm the same.
Look, I'm not going to tell somebody what gender they are, but like Jordan Peterson, if someone is then saying, well, I want to identify as like a worm person, I need to call me worm, it's a little bit like, well, okay, where do you draw the line?
Yeah.
If you're then making laws that make that a certain thing, I'm just a bit like,
I think
we're this is my personal view. I think we're approaching a time where people are starting to break down elements of society that are really challenging the fabric of what it means to be human and how we operate, to the degree that I'm not comfortable with.
Okay.
So I like an element of, this is how things are. Don't screw around with it. Just let it be.
Okay.
And you just need to put your emotions to the side, because facts don't care about your emotions.
I think it's
and I would just add to that, sorry to interrupt you, that like that will be an unpopular opinion with a relatively small minority, a very loud small minority of people that will be up in arms that I would think something like that.
And when you're saying that, there's a difference between gender and sex as well. Like you're talking about sex, like man and woman.
Yes.
And then there's but I'm of the same mind where I'm not at all bothered by anything that anybody wants me to call them, because in my day-to-day life, I never come across someone that is saying to me that I have to call them this, that, and the next thing. And if they did, it would not bother me in one bit. That's just, I take everyone as they are. That's the way I do. But the one thing that frustrates me is when people set traps and with sort of changing like the pronouns from day to day, so they can just catch people out and then sort of go all sort of PC on them.
Yeah.
That is when it becomes frustrating,
It's this sort of oppressive victim mentality that I just can't be dealing with.
You just have to be kind to everyone regardless of what you're going through,
We're all human beings, man, and we all naturally judge people probably to a degree. I mean,
of course.
There's an example that to go back to Peter Sage, when I was at a seminar, had this great example where imagine you had two televisions here that were broadcasting everything that you thought in your head. And that makes you super, aware of the stuff that it basically makes you regulate your thought processes a lot.
Yeah.
So when I look at you and I'm like, oh, he's got like a beard and a t-shirt and stuff. It's just like, those are shit thoughts. They have no place on my television,
No, totally.
Dude, I like your t-shirt
just
and your beard.
Just the random stuff that goes through your head.
Yeah, totally.
And like, even if you like someone, you're just like, oh, I could hit them over the head with this. Not you.
I know,
but just
man.
like random shit that goes through your head.
I try to look for reasons to like people rather than reasons as to like why we're different.
Yeah.
I'm much more try to be like unity and connection and like, we're all human. We've created these constructs that make it seem as though I'm different from you, but fundamentally we're all the same. Or we're all completely different, but what unifies us is the fact we're all human.
Yeah.
And if an alien spaceship arrives tomorrow trying to wipe us out, we'd all fight back in for humanity.
Or if you want to be a part of our civilization, then we take him in as well, or she.
Yeah, of course.
No, it's the same. Like a lot of this language is divisive, and it's used to split people up, and us and them, people from other people, and it's just not good. This is not the direction that we need to be going in.
But it will come to a sort of tipping point, or it will get so extreme that it will come back. The pendulum always swings. It's like the UFC fighters that are the gobshites, that it will come back to, the guys who are the quietest guys will be getting the title fights.
Yeah, man, thank you for that. I think on that note, we're just about at the end.
Cool.
Do you want to shout out, give any props to anything, or tell people where they can find you and Inspired Edinburgh?
I said this to someone. I was on another podcast a wee while ago, and I said, "I'm
podcast hussy."
Yeah, it's nice to be able to be in the other role. Well, yeah, I quite enjoy, because I don't probably get the chance to do so as much in Inspired Edinburgh. It's quite nice. I enjoy it, man. I enjoy conversation, and I like learning and finding out about other people and stuff. So yeah, I mean, I said what I said to the other person that was interviewing me was, I'm quite a difficult person to ignore. So Elliot Reeves or Inspired Edinburgh, if you fire those into Google, then you'll find I've got my personal website, my business Inspired Edinburgh website, and I'm all over YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all that good stuff. So,
and you're an SEO master, I imagine, are you?
I mean, I rank pretty much top for most. I mean, my website, Elliot Reeves, is the top search. Okay. But in the Inspired Edinburgh one's a wee bit lower, probably due to the amount of activity that's happened on the other pages, and it's still catching up or something. I've tried to optimize it. I rebuilt my website. I've been using Yoast SEO, which is like the WordPress kind of go-to thing. And I'm still working on that. But yeah, man, that's people can find me if they want to.
Perfect. So I'll just end on a few questions, because usually I do this if you come on for the first time. So favorite movie?
Yeah, that's a good one. I went through a phase of watching actually tons of movies when I was in my early 20s, and I watched some really just messed up stuff. I don't know why. I just thought it would be really interesting.
Ichi the Killer?
Like Driller Killer, Irreversible, Last House on the Left, Scum, Romper Stomper.
I think around that time, everyone watched those type of movies, because I remember watching Irreversible at this time.
Yeah.
But anyway, sorry. It's your favorite
movie. A lot of
movie,
tartan films and all that sort of stuff. But honestly, my favorite film is Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Classic.
It's just so good. Just like the nostalgia, and when the scene where he picks up Sloane from the school and they're driving into the city, and it's Beat City, I think is the song. Yeah. And that's just for me, it's sort of reliving my youth, and just loved it.
Favorite album?
I'm a big trance junkie. That's my jam.
Trans or trance?
Trance, euphoric, progressive,
sweet
dance, house, trance, that sort of genre.
Okay.
I listen to a lot of hip hop and stuff, but mainly trancey stuff. I like. Well, you get that sort of the hairs on your neck and your arms. For me, it just. Yeah, there's something about that. The trance music. Favorite album is, it's a guy called Andrew Rael. He's a Moldovan DJ. He has an album called Find Your Harmony.
Wow.
Which is just he's considered to be the modern day Mozart of trance music.
Really?
Yeah, he fuses together orchestral and sort of female vocals and just all sorts of madness.
What's the name? Sorry.
Find Your Harmony by Andrew Rael. Okay. He has a audio show, a sort of podcast almost with the same name.
You're just describing podcast, an audio show.
It's like a radio show, but it's like a podcast. I don't know.
There's just him and a couple other guys in the mic. Favorite book? Although we talked about you don't like reading.
No, I mean, in terms of audiobooks or any books that I've consumed, I was thinking about that as well. It would be personal development. Typically, we go for Think and Grow Rich, or what's it called? How to Win Friends or Influence People. Yeah. Bit cliche. So two that have had the biggest effect on me. MJ DeMarco's Millionaire Fastlane, awesome book. And Eckhart Tolle, Power of Now, which is a staple.
Yeah,
nowadays for people it seems to be. So yeah,
that's good.
Either of them.
And the big one I'll end on is favorite quote.
Favorite quote.
It's a hard one. People struggle with it.
Yeah, I I used to have about 3,000 motivational quotes saved on my, probably more than that actually, saved on my phone. I eventually had to take them off because they were taking up so much memory. It was more than that actually.
So you're fab.
There's a few. There's like the quality of your life is in direct proportion to the amount of uncertainty you can comfortably live with.
Right.
Or people's lives are a direct reflection of the expectations of their peer group. But probably the biggest one is the ultimate key to freedom is knowing you already are that which you seek.
Right. And do you apply that to your life?
It's difficult. So the way that would normally work is that, whatever it is that you want. So, I want to be a billionaire, or I want a Lamborghini, or whatever it is, like you can sort of project yourself or like look to manifest those things if you believe that you currently have them in the present.
Right.
So that you don't have this pining for stuff. You're not you're not thinking about the past or thinking about the future. You live and breathe it. It's almost like a kind of fake it till you make it type deal.
It's like the power of now, but towards what you want.
Yeah, I think so. It's maybe law of attraction inspired, but yeah, it's just like by creating a separation between where you currently are and where you want to be is where a lot of problems stem and a lot of anxiety. So by just accepting that, if you think that or you want to be something, then you already are.
Mm. Cool.
Yeah, I like it.
Brilliant quote.
Thanks, man.
Thanks for explaining it, and thank you for coming on, Elliot, man. It's been great.
Dude, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Definitely do it again, and for everyone